Welcome to Glory Through Pain, a podcast where we explore the extraordinary power of divine intervention, the truth of the gospel, and miracles that unfold when we trust in God's deliverance. I'm Christy, and on this journey, we'll share stories that testify to the incredible ways God moves in our lives, often in the most unexpected and miraculous ways. From divine interventions that defy explanation to miracles untold, we will discover together that even in our pain, God's glory shines through. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you are facing challenges, seeking healing, or simply craving a deeper connection to God's power, this podcast is here to inspire you, strengthen your faith, and remind you that nothing is impossible with God. So sit back, open your heart, and get ready to hear stories of transformation, healing, and miracles. Welcome to Glory Through Pain. This episode is called A Mother's Perspective, Episode 2. We have Mom here on the podcast. And Mom, this podcast, last week, I talked about, now you know how I wrote a book, Glory Through Pain. I know you loved it.
Yes.
And last week, I talked about some of the miraculous and things that happened in the midst of going through the trial and tribulation of Duke's accident. And this week, I was going to delve into asking you a few questions just to get your perspective on before the accident and kind of the events leading up to it, and also a little bit about the miraculous. Are you ready to dive into this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Mom, can you take us back to those weeks before the accident? Do you remember how heavy things felt? Were you worried about Duke's mental health and how it felt like the doctors just weren't listening? I just want to say, I remember you and I were constantly on the phone because the doctors were seriously not listening to what we had to say. Can you take us back before the accident and just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it was a very, very difficult time for all of us. Duke had been to many different doctors in and out of the hospital. Of course, as a mental health patient, he was resorting to drugs and alcohol because that's what he needed to
Mm-hmm.
do to help, relieve the pain of what he was going through. And so, besides the mental health, it was dealing with his drug and alcohol addiction. And that was just making him incredibly difficult to deal with, anger issues. He actually had tried to commit suicide. So, one of the last events that happened right before
Mm.
the accident was we were in the kitchen having an argument, and he grabbed one of the kitchen knives and actually stabbed himself in the stomach. And I rushed him. I wanted to rush him to a hospital where I knew he would get the best treatment ever and where they would consider the mental health aspect as well. So I took him to one of the most renowned hospitals around, and after several days of being in the hospital and being evaluated and trying once again with different medications, he still was struggling. They still could not get him on the right medications. It's just such a difficult illness to deal with, and each patient is different and each patient deals with each medication differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just such a struggle trying to talk to many different doctors, recapping with every single doctor for years. It was more than 12 years that it took before he finally got on the right medication. And honestly, as tragic as this accident was that he was in, a life-threatening accident, it was the most miraculous, like
That's
you
what I
said,
was going to say. Yeah.
miraculous event that could have happened. Because what happened was, because he was under doctor's care for so long because of all the injuries in the accident, they were able to evaluate his mental health at the same time, and they were able to get him on the right medication. And that truly was beyond miraculous. It's what we had been praying for years. And 12 years later, he walked out of that hospital with his injuries taken care of and his mental health being under control.
Wow. Man, wow, you did an excellent job putting all that into
Yeah.
words. But
Thank
I
you.
know, I can't remember, was he diagnosed with the schizophrenia before the accident or was it after? Because I know I remember calling and being like begging the girl at the hospital to help, and she's like, "There's nothing else we can do." And
So, yes, he had been diagnosed, but again, they had not found the right medication.
yeah,
And that was the problem, and it wasn't helping him. The medications that he was on, he was still living with such mental pain and, again, seeking the drugs and alcohol. And so,
yeah.
yeah, when
Now,
they finally were able to find that medication, he has been a dream ever since.
yes, in Jesus' name. That's, oh, I get chills thinking about the story. It is a miraculous story because I think back to how my brother was to both you and I, and how he was, his relationships with people, just how they would go down south, not by any desire of his own, but just because of the nature of the mental illness. And he's such an intelligent, fun, easygoing guy when he is stable on his medication. Would you agree?
Exactly. It takes him back to the person he was before all this struck him in his late teens.
Yeah. And was there anything else? I'm just thinking as you went over the story, was there anything else that really helped them find the right medication? Like after the accident, I know that he had a lot more gratitude toward life. And
Yes,
if we were to look back and think, how do you feel like this accident and everything that followed changed Duke's life? Like if you could just sum it up in like a few sentences.
well, again, like I said, it has made him a very appreciative person. It has
Yeah.
brought him back to the person he was before his mental illness even
Yeah.
happened later in his teens. It's just made him a wonderful person, appreciative, and he
Hmm.
continues to use his mental health illness to his advantage because he's very creative and he's a songwriter, a rapper, and he turns his lemons into lemonade. Exactly.
He does do that. But
Yes.
I noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure you have, his music is a lot more pure when he writes and raps. It's more, you can hear the gratitude in his voice when he's rapping and
Yes.
the word choice.
Exactly.
And he's got amazing systematic flow. It's really, really, really good. I would compare him with Eminem.
Agreed. Agreed.
We're
Yes.
promoting him here. We're promoting him. Um, let's see, if someone listening to this podcast right now is walking through something that is unthinkable, unbearable to deal with, maybe they're even at a loss of hope with their own child or sibling, what would you say to them, especially when it feels like God is being silent?
I would say never give up. God is there with you, and continue the prayers. Continue to get as many supporting prayers as you can because God will never leave you.
Yeah.
And God will make it right. There is purpose behind what happens, and I believe the purpose was given to us to witness this amazing miracle. And
Yeah.
that's what I truly believe, and I know that's why it happened.
Wow. Did you know? I feel like even more came out of this accident than everything we discussed, which was amazing and miraculous within itself. But as I think back, I know a big part of my story is his growth in his faith as well. His faith in God. because I know, we all struggle from time to time with our faith, but I know that he was really a believer after this happened to him, and it really encouraged his faith. The fact that God saved him through 28 surgeries and a near death experience. And so, I agree with you. I agree. Never give up. I prayed for Duke for 10 years, and I know you were too.
Yes, exactly.
Last question for you. When you were reading the book Glory Through Pain, which I wrote, and it took me 14 years to write, the story really reveals a lot about our family's pains and the miraculous and God's miracle working power through our family. Were you really touched by the book, or how did it make you feel?
I was very touched. In fact, I'm glad that outsiders read the book too, because I was so impressed and touched and inspired by it. I thought, is it just more meaningful to me because I know the story? But when others read it and told me the same thing that
Yeah.
I felt, then I was like, wow, it has inspired everyone else just as much. So
Wow.
I think it was very well written.
Thank you.
I didn't want to put the book down. And I
Oh,
was reading like an outside person, like what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Wow. Christy's faith and her family's faith really pulled them through.
wow. It's incredible. And I know you wrote that on one of my 5-star reviews that I received 100% of 5-star reviews. Check out Glory Through Pain, guys. If you get the opportunity, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble's bookstore, online. I want to thank you, Mom, so much for being a part of this podcast today. It was really inspirational and encouraging to hear you and your viewpoint on the whole situation.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here with you. I love you and keep doing what you're doing.
I love you too. Thank you so much. Next week, we're going to have a visitor that you haven't heard from except sneaking onto this podcast. You will hear of Duke Callahan and his own experience from the book Glory Through Pain.